migration, and we had specifically looked at migration and women. And therefore, we now want to look at another aspect of gender, and there we're looking at the issue of men and migration. So we're saying that the gender significantly influences migration experiences for both men and women, and traditional social models often portray men as primary migrants for economic reasons, while women migrate for family reunification. So traditional models that explain partly the reasons as to why people migrate. They characterize that men majority move because of economic reasons, and then they also portray that women move for family reunification issues such as marriage. Probably they are moving because their child is there or because their husband is there. So most of the migration that occurs among women is related to issues of family. However, we are seeing a changing trend in this aspect, and we're seeing women moving more for work-related issues. Then we're also seeing female migrants still facing vulnerabilities and discriminations. And I think we're able to look at some of these issues retrospectively when we are starting this whole discussion on migration. So, if we were to say gender roles and migration decisions, we're just saying here that in the traditional expectations, men migrate for work, whereas females migrate for family issues. And therefore, as a student of migration, but broadly as a demographer, your interest will be on the roles the family reasons play on family on reproductive health services. Because then, if a woman is migrating because of family reasons, then the chances that we're going to have a population surge in the area that the woman is going to, and probably we shall also have a population reduction here. Why? Because a reproductive age woman has left this particular place. So you need to compare the marriage rates and the migration rates within that catchment. So if more young women are being married into a particular village than those that are leaving for marriages, then there are chances that the family or the community population will increase. So, however, these roles are evolving, and more women are migrating for education and personal opportunities, but also some men experience pressure to maintain masculinity upon migration. And that is why we're starting to see, even when traditionally it is supposed to be women being married, nowadays some men are getting married to women. We see it happen that a man will leave their place to go to the woman's place to get married. So those are some of the trends that are changing. Whatsoever perspective you have about them, they are a trend that we cannot deny that is not occurring. So research indicates that a higher proportion of female internal migrants in developing countries. Therefore, we are seeing more females actually moving within the developing countries. And also the rate of female migration is increasing globally. And women are being drawn to these opportunities. So we're seeing actually the aspects of gender we're seeing the aspects of gender come in here, and specifically, you're looking at the empowerment of women, where women are now able to attend education, they're able to get employment opportunities, and they are able to be independent. Therefore, that is why we're seeing a trend of migration that is occurring and having more female compared to the traditional aspect where more men were actually moving, like we said, for economic related issues. So this particular migration issue has also brought in the issue of gender roles shift. So when we're seeing the woman going to work, going to school and being independent, we are on the other side also realizing that even now the gender roles are shifting. The men are now starting to involve themselves in doing the house chores, and the specific roles that were assigned to women, gender roles that were assigned to women. Men are starting to, 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 to actually carry these particular roles. However, there are different challenges that come up with it. So you realize in a particular family, probably the man becomes more inferior than it was traditionally, and the issues of decision making, so all shift. So there is a current challenge of whether it is actually gender balance or it is now gender balance shifting. Instead of advocating for equity, now instead the women would go above the men, because if there is a shift in the gender role, then it mostly comes with issues of decision making and resource controls and so forth. So women and girls are also vulnerable to forced migrations due to conflict, persecution, and environmental factors. Rural women face specific hardships due to migrations, whether they stay behind or migrate themselves. And we're saying the rise of there is a rise of the modern urbanization, and we're saying the 20th century witnessed a very significant acceleration of urbanization, the global urban population reaching 50% by 2000. And we are accrediting this particular rapid growth to economic development and industrialization. Like we said earlier on, as a result of industrialization, we have more people moving from the rural areas to the urban areas in search for better employment opportunities, but also they are expecting that the chances that they can be employed or they can get something tangible, or they are expecting that even the urban rates are better than the rates that are in the rural areas, and therefore that leads to the urbanization that has recently sprouted out. But also we are attributing this to improved transportation and communication technologies. Therefore, one of these, it is easier for an individual to move to the urban setting from the rural area. It is also easier for people to communicate within themselves, and they are able to understand what is happening. So if someone goes to the urban setting, because they have a phone, they can actually communicate back home, and they ask their people to go to the urban area, because communication has been made easier. Then we go to some of the key characteristics of urbanization, but I think we already explored majority of them. But we just want to have a brief as we're explaining the aspect of migration patterns here. So one is the demographics. There must be a population shift from rural to urban areas, but also there is a spatial growth of towns and cities, and then there's a socioeconomic change. So you realize that there is often a change in the social structures, the occupation, and the family patterns. So whereas in a village or traditionally in the rural areas, the family patterns are more of extended families and so forth. When places are starting to urbanize, you realize we have nuclear families, people staying with their spouses and the children only, and the kind of housing is also different. The social structures and the type of work they do are so different when you're starting to urbanize. But also there is a cultural diversity because people are coming from different places and different social areas. Therefore, the level of social interaction increases, but also there is exposure to new ideas that increases in there. So when urban areas, we can categorize them based on their size, density, and morphology that we looked at the other time, and we said you can categorize them into cities, into towns, into merged urban areas, or what we call conurbations, into suburbs. So all those classifications we can do for an urban area in terms of those characteristics that we have there. And some of the benefits of urbanization include economic growth, innovation and technology, improved access to education and healthcare, cultural exchanges. So specifically, you have to look at your area of specialization. If the benefit is economic growth and job creation, you have to look at it on how it impacts reproductive health services, which means therefore that when the economic growth aspects occur, we have better standards of living, we have jobs that are created and therefore people are working, which means people are able to earn income and access reproductive health services. But also when people are able to, when there is economic growth, the type of service that is offered improves. But also the number of children would reduce because of the economic growth. We have studied a lot of theories regarding that, and we very well know that because of the costs that are associated to raising one child, then people will rather reduce the number of children they have in order to accommodate the standards of living that they intend to have. So rapid urbanization can also lead to problems if proper infrastructure and services are not developed. And we're saying housing shortages and slums spring up like we discussed the other time, but also traffic congestion and pollution becomes an issue. And there are social inequalities and crimes that increase, and the social inequalities would mean that probably there's a certain standard of for food, and therefore you may not, when the urban area starts, there is a certain amount of food you cannot eat because you may not be able to afford. So food will be at a certain standard of level because the place is rapidly urbanizing, and they expect that those who are within within that urban setting are able to afford that specific amount. But also you realize actually that because of this kind of rapid urbanization, what happens is that there are certain places that are for a certain social class. So, for example, there are food hubs. There is a certain residential place where you can only go there if you're buying a condominium. There's a certain standard of renting, and therefore those who are unable to afford that specific rent, they are socially thrown out away from that space. So they have to go and look for where their social class belongs. So it leads to all those challenges. But what are the factors, or what is the driving force that is leading to urbanization in the recent past? And like we've continuously explained, economic growth is one of them. The demographic changes of mortality and fertility, industrialization and modernization, globalization, and the marketization factors that are helping, especially the developing world, to to be able to rapidly urbanize. So the UNHCR or the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees defines an urban settlement as a concept, and they categorize these urban settlements as based on their form. One, we have dispersed or isolated buildings spread across an area, or we have nucleated, meaning buildings clustered around a certain central point. We have linear buildings concentrated along the route. So these are some of the settlement patterns that you needed in here. And this is where we ask, I asked the question last time. So you found the concept. This is